Zorgamazoo, Chapter 8 A Ghost of a Town. When Katrina looked closer and squinted her eyes, she was suddenly struck by a hidden surprise. Concealed in the bushes and blossoming vines and the elms and the oaks and the willows and pines, behind all the branches, behind all the leaves, were doorways and windows and shingles and eaves. "Hello!" Morty hollered. "Is anyone here? Or is it just us, plus the rabbits and deer?" But no one called back because no one was there. The Zorgles were gone, and the question was, where? That, thought Katrina, is what I'd like to know. These countryside Zorgles, where would they go? A whole village of creatures can't fall through the gaps. They can't just suddenly vanish, or could they? Perhaps. "All right," she proposed, "let's knock on some doors. Let's look in some windows and open some drawers. It's a mystery, Mort, like Philip Marlowe, like Sherlock and Watson or Hercule Poirot." Katrina, you see, was a bit of a buff when it came to detectives and mystery stuff. Morty, of course, he persisted to think that he was a coward, a phony, a fink, completely unfit for mysterious things. He was rather more comfortable off in the wings. But Katrina was right. They should push on ahead. "All right, then, let's search," he reluctantly said. "Great," said Katrina. "Now here's what we'll do. I think that it's best if we split into two. We can cover more ground if we do it that way. It's simply more sensible, wouldn't you say?" Before Morty could grumble, "Well, no, I think not," Katrina went rocketing off like a shot. She was anxious and eager to sniff out the truth, to play the detective, the snooper, the sleuth. So Morty alone was just a bit scared. His fingers were trembling. His nostrils were flared. The whole of his face was a panicky frown, because Zorgamazoo was a ghost of a town. Meanwhile, Katrina was deep in the wood, going farther, perhaps, than she probably should. Yet still she kept searching and scampering through to the outermost fringes of Zorgamazoo. She came through the trees before coming to stop on the rim of a cliff near a treacherous drop. She stood there a moment, perched out on the ledge on the verge of the mountain's calamitous edge. The view made Katrina feel suddenly free, looking over the city, the hills, and the sea. With her hand, she shielded her eyes from the sun. It started, she thought, my adventure's begun. On the edge of the cliff was a towering tree. It had grown up as high as Katrina could see, and surrounding the trunk was a spiraling stair. So she climbed it, of course, to see what was there. At the top was a cottage, a cabin of thatch, built into the trunk where the branches attach. The door of the cottage was open a crack. It creaked in the breeze. It hung eerily slack. Pushing open the door, Katrina went in, as a gaggle of goose pimples prickled her skin. Inside the cottage was thoroughly trashed. The chairs were in splinters. The windows were smashed. The floor had been scuffed. The dishes were chipped. Even the pillows and cushions were ripped. When Katrina saw this, she instantly knew. These were signs of struggle. And that was a clue. It meant that the Zorgles were kidnapped. Of course, they were stolen away. They were taken by force. Yet this gloomy deduction was only the start. She knew it was only the tiniest part, just a droplet of truth in an ocean of doubt. And soon other questions were starting to sprout. Questions of who, of why, and of how. These countryside Zorgles, where were they now? As she was thinking and wondering why, she heard down below her a whimpering cry. It rose to a pitch that could bring you to tears by stirring your soul or by splitting your ears. "Who's there?" asked Katrina. "Who's making that sound? Hey, Morty, that you? Quit fooling around." But the wailing went on like the wind in a squall, and Katrina could tell it wasn't Morty at all. The howling resounded inside of her head like a ghostliest, ghastliest wall of the dead. It was then that she knew it was time to admit. She and Morty, perhaps, well, they shouldn't have split. After all, there she was, unaided, alone, with only this eerie, ethereal moan. But in spite of her doubts, she valiantly tried to quell her misgivings, push panic aside as she climbed from the tree and down to the ground to seek out the source of this whimpering sound. At the bottom, she followed the noise to the edge of a thicket and almost impassable hedge. The branches were dense, so impossibly thick that the bramble was virtually made out of brick. The sound, as she stood there, it started to change. It sounded less eerie, less fearsome and strange. Drawing nearer, she realized it wasn't so bad. It wasn't so scary, just incredibly sad. "Hey," said Katrina, "you sure gave me a scare, but why are you crying? What's the trouble in there?" Whatever it was, it let out a yowl, a sob that was more like an animal's growl. At this point, Katrina assumed that she knew. This must be a Zorgal from Zorgamazoo. "Hey, listen," she said, "and please understand, my friend and I came here to give you a hand." The creature, however, did nothing but groan. It let out its loudest, most miserable moan. "Okay," said Katrina, "I can hear you're upset. I know I'm a stranger. We've only just met, but perhaps you can help me. I'm asking you, please. Could you do me a favor? Come out of the trees." But the creature was stubborn. It bellowed some more, with a moan that was quickly becoming a roar. "Fine," said Katrina, "just have it your way. You can whimper and snivel and bellow and bray. You can splutter and blubber and kick up a din. But if you don't come out, then I'm coming in." And so, with a shove and a thrash and a push, she scraped her way in through the bramble and bush. Inside was a creature. It was curled in a ball. But it wasn't a Zorgal. Oh, no, not at all. It was hardly a Zorgal from Zorgamazoo. No, this thing was bigger and hairier, too. It's the end of chapter 8.